Thank you so much for attending. Just quickly, can I see a quick show of hands? Anyone who, before this agenda came out, or even up until today, has no idea what a social media auditor is? Fantastic. So we've all dealt with them. We used to call them a nasty name, people with cameras. And they're basically people who show up with cameras trying to make a nuisance of themselves, get a film clip that they can put on their social media and get lots of clicks. So the NPSA has recognized that this is an issue, and they've released formal guidance on it for frontline security officers. And it's a lovely 4-step process that has the acronym CALM, and basically encourages officers to be respectful, not to engage as much as possible, much more monitor, report, and do not engage unless you have to. So this is the guidance that has come out, and we have 4 distinguished guests. And I would actually like to hear from each of you, your first question. In 60 seconds or less, what is either a pro or a con to this very short guidance that has come out on how to deal with social media auditors? So Scott, I will start with you.
Thank you. I think the first thing with any guidance is exactly that, it's guidance. It's like any policy, sometimes you might have to step outside of it. The first thing, certainly from a background in law enforcement, is that you've got to follow the law. My view is, as a security professional organisation, or security professionals ourselves, you need to know what the law is before you apply any sort of policy or guidance, what you can and cannot do. That's important.
Is that a con then?
It can be both. Depends which way you're coming from it.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, from my view, I think that it's a pro. The guidance is quite simple to follow. And I think if too much information is provided to people, whether that be security officers or colleagues within an organisation, it can confuse things and can muddy the waters. So I think that the guidance that's being given, is concise and will be really useful for security officers to actually implement and put into practice.
Pete?
Yeah, I think the pro is that the guidance it's easy to remember, it's simplified as much as it can be, and I think if the guidance is applied well, the social media auditor is going to create a very boring video, right? Which is what we all kind of want. I think if it's kind of a con, I think that the guidance is just the guidance. I think that point's been made on the panel already. And actually to apply that requires more than just reading the guidance. It actually, I think, requires quite a lot of emotional intelligence to apply it well under the pressure of what the frontline security operatives are facing in that moment.
Angus?
I think it's a pro in general on the basis that it's accessible to all staff. So I think this is an issue that faces everyone in an organisation. There's a social media auditor that isn't picking out the one trained security staff you've got. They're picking out whoever looks vulnerable, whoever's available. So I think the fact that everyone can access it on the NPSA website is really positive.
So that actually leads perfectly into my next question, which is how do we train people on this? So as far as I know, this is brand new guidance. It's not a part of SIA badge. So how do we ensure that all of our officers are trained on this? But more than that, how do we ensure the members of our organization understand this in case they happen to be the one person who gets targeted by a social media auditor? Go ahead, Scott.
Again, everything comes down to training, doesn't it? In the security industry, we should have a basic knowledge of everyday and any person powers. And sometimes in the security industry, that's lacking. Any use of force, understanding the law in relation to photography. The very simple thing for me is where are you? We're looking after places. We're in a public space at the moment. It's public because the hotel allows people to come in, but actually this is a private place. So as a security officer, you need to know the law, what your powers are to eject. What you'll get is these auditors who'll use aspects of the law. They've done a little bit of Googling. They found out that under some Criminal Law Act in 1972 that public place is defined as this, but that's relevant to a certain section of law. It might be the Public Order Act, it might be the Offensive Weapons Act, something like that. So they use a little bit of knowledge, and that kind of confuses the security officers. So I think we've got to go back to basics, learn what our basic powers are, and again, what we can do on private premises or licensed premises and our powers to eject. And I think the first thing to think of is what is the company or your organisation's strategy, because for me it's really important. We were the subject of an auditor last year, If you Google that now, that comes up top of the videos for security in the Royal Albert Hall. So for me, that's important. You know, someone doing the hostile reconnaissance is going to view that video and see what our posture is in dealing with people who are potentially obnoxious on your premises. That says a lot about your security, in my opinion.
Matt?
Thank you. Similar to Scott, my organisation, what I work with, has experienced this on more than one occasion. It seems to be an attraction because of the national infrastructure and the railway and the attraction to trains. Therefore, to answer the question, I think it's really, really important, the training. In fact, it's crucial. I'm a firm believer in developing people, whether that be basic training or development training that people may need. And I think that we don't just shoehorn that into sort of SIA basic training, but we also really put that into our employees and also our contractors as well, that may work for our business for a short period of time, because we all want everybody to be bought into that really positive security culture that's required to be able to be trained, obviously, to do the best job possible.
Pete?
Yeah, I think to go back to my earlier point that the guidelines are great, but they require training, absolutely. I think it's quite a difficult situation for most human beings to face that. It's quite highly pressured. And as Scott was saying, that the auditors know enough to be very difficult, and they're very confident in how they operate. So I think part of the training should be increasing awareness. So I've asked quite a lot of friends in the industry over the last few weeks, kind of leading up to this panel discussion, you know, do you know what a social media auditor is? And it's a lot of people aren't aware of exactly what it is. So I think just increasing awareness. And one thing I've done over the last few days is, and I think this might actually be helpful as part of the training, is binge watching lots of these videos. Now, I don't want to get these guys more hits, right? Because that's exactly what they want. But it's actually quite helpful, and I think it's given me a much better understanding of what Scott was saying earlier on about they're actually quite good at what they do with the little bit of knowledge that they have. And I think just making sure that staff have a one step ahead to respond to that is really important. And so I think it's crucial.
Angus?
I think I'd echo that. What we understand from the social media auditors is they're there for sort of click engagements. They want snappy titles, they want aggressive, either verbal or physical confrontations and things. So it's understanding what the social media auditor is trying to get out of the situation, and then also how we can mitigate against that, how we make that uninteresting. I think it was repeated before, taking it back to the basics and just saying this is the powers you have on your site. They can film, they can, within reason, be in areas of the site, especially with, I saw recently, Labour were talking about introducing the right to roam across more of the UK, and that could impact a lot of sites and things. I'm not sure how directly. But it'd be interesting to see how that develops. So it's understanding your own limitations within the site and just making the videos uninteresting. Any kind of conflict is what they're there for. They want a clickbaity title.
So when I drafted these questions the week before last, we hadn't yet been hit by a social media auditor, and that changed last week. We actually got targeted. So I'm going to take a bit of a left turn because I'm driving the bus. And I'm going to say, instead of worrying for 5 seconds about our organization, I want to worry for 5 seconds about the security officers who are generally the target of these shows. And I can only imagine, the embarrassment, the self-doubt, the mental health issues that might arise from being one of these officers who gets targeted on one of these videos. And so my next question is, how do we safeguard our officers? We are asking these people to be our representatives, to go out there and talk to them and approach them, and we could be putting them in harm's way by doing that. So, how do we protect our officers? Scott?
Again, I think it comes down to training. You think, certainly after we were targeted last year, the first thing that an auditor will probably target the individual security officer for is their SIA licence. It's not on view, it might be the wrong way around. Then they'll go on about what the law is in relation to that they're going to prosecute them, etc. So, having that confidence that the security officer knows that they have actually got the licence on display. They have to show it by law to, the police officer or to, an official person, the SIA, maybe somebody from the council. They don't have to show it to an auditor. So, if they're being filmed, they can cover it up. They're not breaking the law by doing that, but just giving them the knowledge and the confidence in doing that. The other thing to think about from this is, a lot of my security contracted officers come from, various parts of London. some people in their communities might not know they're a security officer. It might not be one of those things that's celebrated, on the estate that they live in. So potentially it could put them at risk, because prior to it being on YouTube or Google, or wherever it might end up, nobody who lives near them knew that they were security. So it might be somebody who's got a domestic violence issue. There's an injunction in place. How do you deal with that? It's really, really hard to legislate. I would hope that you can probably negotiate with the person and say, look, if you get that chance to do it, they might do it, but it's really, really hard. So yeah, education's key, people knowing their powers is key, I think, and some good old-fashioned negotiation, maybe.
Matt?
I think, first of all, for me, is that security officers are part of the team. At Alstom, I see whether we contract out security officers to another company or not, they're part of my wider team. So we look after them as much as we'd look after our own employees. It's like a family. And I know that sounds corny, but that's how you get the most out of people, and it truly works. And I think we've really got to consider the psychological impact that an incident such as that can have on an individual, the repercussions that it will have, and the families that they have. So we owe it as an organisation, with the partnerships that we have with our security providers, to support those security officers in being able to have the confidence to act in the right way and know that they'll be supported, most importantly from an organisational perspective with the security company, but also from a client perspective. I think that's really crucial.
Pete?
Yeah, sure. I think just to add on to the points already, technology can help. And full disclosure, I work for a technology company, so just put that out there. But there's technology available where we can hopefully prevent or avoid just high risk or people at greater risk being put into that situation in the first place. And so, for example, there's, as we all know, there's technology available now that can detect people and their behaviour before they've got into the area or right at the perimeter. So we can get early detections back to the control room, and therefore we can then make a decision of who should then go out and speak to the auditor. And obviously, as the point's been made already, there's an opportunity when the right person comes out to have that conversation to be communicating the fact that there's a professionalised security posture there. So there's actually an opportunity to do that. But also just having, I think it's a difficult situation, so we've got the opportunity to send the right person to go and handle the auditor. And as I say, there's technology available to empower and to enable that. And I think one of the things that came up in many of the panels this morning was just that this technology is there to help augment human decision making. It's a people problem that is resolved with people. The technology is there just to kind of assist, really. So I think technology, there's technology available that can help.
Thank you. Angus?
I think for me, it's sort of the practice without consequences. So recently I did a social media audit test on one of Matt's sites. So I was the mouthy git behind the camera that was trying to provoke staff. I got onto site, I was irritating people, I was chatting with them. But so they were able to have the experience of someone coming onto site without the consequence of it being posted on social media and things. So they were able to then review the videos afterwards, they were able to look through, see what went well, see what went badly, and how they could improve next time. And that was, I believe, then shown to a wide part of the organisation, which were able to learn from it, and that applied to a lot of other sites across the UK, which I think is the best way of approaching it, where you can, if you get people in who can go and irritate and can provoke these situations, but without the consequences of it being posted online and causing a stir reputationally.
So I want to turn quickly to the corporate side of things. Scott, I think it was you who mentioned hostile reconnaissance and how these videos could easily be used for that. How do we protect our organizations who might end up on YouTube with a drone shot showing the entire compound? So once the apple's left the cart, how do you protect your organization?
Again, there's so much information online. I'll take my organisation, for example. You can look at it on Google Earth. You can see what the building looks like, the roof, etc. You can do a virtual walk around the building. People filming it all the time. Generally, in a security posture, we don't have a problem with people taking photographs of our beautiful buildings. What we do have a problem with is you causing our staff and members of the public or people visiting us, harassment, alarm or distress. That's the issue we're targeting. Photography isn't a crime. You being a pain in the backside isn't really a crime, but if you're doing that on our land, we have got the choice to remove you from our land if it so suits us. So yeah, a little bit of confidence, training is important, but really, I think the quote I use is auditing activity is mostly harmless. Well, it is, but if you show a poor response to that online, millions of people can potentially see that. So it's got to be a positive response backed up by knowledge of the law, training and policy.
So I'm not going to pick on you, but I do want to ask a quick follow-up question. How do you then convince senior leadership and senior management not to freak out when this happens?
I think if you're being professional and you've done everything right, then, like I say, I've been audited for 30 years. I've been under intense scrutiny as a police officer for 30 years. I'm used to it. Somebody who's just stepped into the security industry might not have that confidence and experience. So, yeah, it's literally about training and experience, isn't it?
Matt, what about you? How do you deal with senior leadership after an audit?
I think it's having the confidence to be articulate with them, to explain to them why it's happened, what the motivation of that individual is, and how I can reassure them in the best possible way that obviously our assets, our trade secret information is protected as well as it can be. But with the best will in the world, I think we need to be realistic that we're not hugely protected by legality around this. Therefore, it's very, very difficult for security officers, employees, or myself in a position as head of security to make big changes as to what we can and can't do to protect that. I think the key is dealing with these individuals properly when they first attend the site, having that really robust but fair culture with them and conversation, so that if the company does end up on social media, that at least it would be received positively, as opposed to having that negative reputation that can very, very quickly snowball.
Matt? Sorry. Yeah, Matt. No,
Pete,
yes, sorry,
yeah.
Pete.
So that's fine. I think I would just echo what's been said already, really. I think there's that opportunity to get a positive out of this negative situation of being able to communicate that we take our security seriously and you will be challenged if you hang around our site. And I think, and being able to do that in a way that, as I said earlier on, actually creates a rather boring and video for the auditor is, I think that's the opportunity. So I think getting that training in place, being able to demonstrate that, as an organisation, we can handle this particular threat. Yeah, I'm kind of repeating these guys really, but yeah.
Angus, from the Foreign Wealth Office, do you have anything else to add that how you would reassure people after one of these videos comes out?
I think the NPSA sort of nailed it when they said the actual impact to the business is quite minimal. It's much more how it impacts the people on the ground, the frontline staff, and how they react to it, and how sort of the conflict goes between the auditor and the person on the ground. So I think in terms of reassuring the sort of senior leadership, as long as your staff are reacting well and they're trained well, and like the conversation we've had, there really shouldn't be much they could be concerned by. Lots of people have videos of the outside of buildings, and even the best social media auditors are only getting so far inside a building, and then there's not that much sensitive information they can get from the outside of a building. And if there is, then you've got more problems anyway.
Thank you so much. I think that wraps up our panel, so thank you all for attending and thank you for your opinions.